Hi, friends. Welcome to the Genuinely Curious podcast. This is episode 4, and I'm excited to be back. As I always say, we got some WNBA stuff to talk through today. It was the first week of the regular season, so there's a lot to talk about in there. We've got Bridgerton. That came out this week, and I have thoughts. I have many, many thoughts. We had chaos in Congress, and I usually wouldn't talk about political things, but this was just a hot mess this week, and so it is worth noting for sure. So yeah, that's pretty much the big stuff. We'll talk about Simone Biles and Sydney McLaughlin because they were back in action this week. So let's get into it. And we also need a theme song, and that will happen at some point. So yeah, let me get on that. Anyway, let's talk about the first week in the WNBA. First off, and not to belittle the game in any way, but the tunnel fits have been bringing it, and that's what I've seen a lot on social media. I was just talking to a guest who we're going to have on the podcast, which I'm very excited about fashion being in sports and how that has developed some of the branding in women's sports, which is a good thing. I don't think we need to be exactly like the men's game, and I also don't think it's frivolous to talk about those things. So if you're not following me on TikTok already, I talk about outfits for WNBA. That is at Shantiana Keys. So follow me there. But so tunnel fits, huge. Secondly, the big story, of course, in WNBA has been Caitlin Clark, right? The big story in women's basketball lately has been Caitlin Clark, of course. So she has struggled. And you know what's crazy is there were so many people when Diana Taurasi said there would be an adjustment, that she's not going to come in and just dominate the league. And she wasn't the only voice that said that, but there were multiple voices out there that said it's not going to be some sort of cakewalk for Caitlin Clark. And they were right. And that anybody who's watched the game for any extended period of time would have known that. There are 144 women's basketball players in the league, and they're the best of the best. We are the best basketball players. I say we, not me. Best country as far as women's basketball is concerned. Okay. And so when you take the best pool of athletes, pool of basketball players, and then you only take the cream of the crop, the top 144 players in the most dominant country in the world. All right. We're at we've got to be up to 5, 6 Olympic golds back to back to back to back. I mean, it can't be over explained or overstated because the women's basketball in the US has been dominant for decades. So you take the cream of the crop of that group and you get the WNBA. So night in, night out, anybody can win. Okay. I think that there's this misconception about the worst team in the league and how beatable they are, which is insane. I even had a kid say to me the local high school basketball team who didn't win their region could beat the worst team in WNBA, which last year was the Phoenix Mercury. Okay. But yeah, honestly, all of those ideas are just, they show a level of ignorance. And again, we know that people are ignorant about women's basketball because they have not been paying attention. But it's amazing to see all these people who are outside the sport and maybe watch men's basketball who want to make all these huge proclamations. And we'll get to more of that because, of course, that happened on a podcast this week. But let's just talk through Caitlin's numbers. So Indiana played the New York Liberty twice this week, which that's a tough schedule. And then their first game was Connecticut, which again, another tough game. Both of those teams are in the hunt for winning a WNBA championship. Okay. They are one of the only teams that seem poised enough to keep the Las Vegas Aces from going back to back to back. But also shout out to the Vegas Aces who got a $100,000 sponsorship from the city of Las Vegas, which I would really like us not to call it a sponsorship because I don't know. Somehow that seems like charity in some way. And I know that may not be we're talking semantics here and it all means the same, I guess. But can we say endorsement? I really think endorsement would be a better way to describe it. Not like they're just giving money out, because those women earned it. They bring in money. The organization brings in money. The organization cannot pay them directly. And so maybe the city felt like this was a good way to help foster their relationship with the organization. But of course, they're under investigation now, which is all very confusing, frankly. I feel like you could do anything that it's feeling real NCAA. I'll put it that way. There seems to be there are a lot of rules around this money and the WNBA, and it is quite frustrating for fans who know that these women are very underpaid. ADHD tangent over. Well, let's come back to the games. So her first game against Connecticut, she had 20 points. I think a lot of those were in the second half, if I'm recalling correctly, maybe the fourth quarter. I was watching this game, but it wasn't a good game. Just know that. Her first half was not good. Carrington had her pretty much locked up. She was doing a good job, like face denying her, getting over screens, just really disrupting her. And Carrington's really not that big. So that was kind of shocking. But, I mean, we did see, like, what Raven was able to do. And Raven's not as tall as her either. So not a great outing that first time. So people started to press the panic button, of course. She had 9 points in the second game, so even worse, on 8 field goal attempts. So I'm guessing after that first game, she, looked at film. She knows, like, within their lineup, she's got to be one of the scoring options, but she also has to facilitate more than she did maybe at Iowa, right? You've got Aaliyah Boston on your team. You've got Nalissa Smith on your team. You're going to have to share the ball in a different way than you did at Iowa. And frankly, in the WNBA, not one single person kind of, again, we're talking about very talented grown women. One person is not going to be able to lead you to a championship. They play a huge role, of course. Somebody can play a huge role. You think of an Asia on a Las Vegas Aces. You think of a Brianna Stewart on the New York Liberty. Those are huge pieces, but you can't do championships with just one person. So you have 15 field goal attempts on the first night against Connecticut, made 5. So 20 points there. She had 8 attempts in the second game against the New York Liberty. She was 2 for 8. So she did not shoot well. Shot 7 threes in that New York Liberty game, 11 threes versus Connecticut. And then their last game, their loss to New York Liberty, again, 17 field goal attempts, 22 points, 9 made field goals, 4 for 10 from 3. So that was easily her best game, was this last one against the New York Liberty. I thought she seemed more poised. She took advantage of what the defense gave her, and Benai Jelani was doing a great job guarding her, especially that first half. But all in all, a better outing for her, and it seemed like she maybe figured out a few things. Now, again, is she going to have some sort of huge all-star caliber season? I just don't know. Maybe she figures a few things out. She's able to get to her shots easier, watches some film. Who knows? I don't know if we've seen the best of her this season, but we shouldn't be expecting 30-point games out of Caitlin Clark. It just is, it's absurd to think she's going to go against these grown women, show up and bully them. That's just not going to happen. And every team is going to take it personally because the eyes of the media are out there. And frankly, the media has been disrespectful. To think that this young athlete is going to come in and dominate your league and has all this media attention, I just think everybody feels a way about that. All right. And not that they don't want to grow the game and not that they dislike Caitlin Clark, but put some respect on their name first, So that was her first week. Again, I expect better out of her. She's going to get acclimated. She will be an all-star in the future. Like, I have no doubt. But the speed at which people think that's going to happen, like, let's relax. Let's chill. And you know what? Like, this kid doesn't seem to think that was going to happen. Like, I really believe Caitlin Clark is a student of the game. She watches the WNBA. She grew up watching the WNBA. And does she think she belongs? Of course. But does she think what the average non-basketball watching fan thinks? No. Because she's a lot more educated. She knows that these are the best women in the country, best women in the world playing basketball, period. All right. So I do feel like she's like handled it pretty well in terms of like staying competitive, not getting down, using the media attention to the best of her advantage and allowing the league to use it as well. But I don't think she's under any delusion that she is better than she is or in a place that she didn't expect to be, right? Of course she wants to play well, but I just don't think she thought she was going to come in dropping 30 the way that like the average 16-year-old boy thought she would, you know? But moving to people with a lot of bad takes, Jeff Teague, that man's name is not Teagues, and Teagues is from Abbott Elementary. But Jeff Teague, former NBA basketball player, apparently has a podcast. They will give a podcast to anybody, apparently. And I do understand the irony of that. So Club 520, the podcast, decided to have this discussion about Caitlin Clark and her coming to the WNBA, and had the nerve to say that the women should be allowing her to have more success. Her opponents should be allowing her to have more success. Houseway, in what professional league would someone do that? It's insane to think that these women are going to throw games, allow, again, this 22-year-old to come into the game, drop 30 a game, which people are not doing in the WNBA, drop 30 and lose. Like, much has been made about Caitlin Clark being competitive. Like, what do you think these women, the top 144 women in the world, what do you think that they are? How do you think that they got to where they are? They are also competitors. They're not laying down because you want them to. So Jeff Teague, like, the idea, like, that's not a competitive mindset. And I have a hard time believing that he would make that sort of statement about a men's league or make that sort of statement about the NBA. Like, he knows he would be called a punk if he decided to, like, let a young rookie come in and punk him. Like, what are you talking about? And it's actually annoying to even be talking about this, frankly, because, like, why give time to something like that, an idea like that, such an absurd idea? But we're all talking heads here at this point. He's got a podcast, I got a podcast, and so we're just talking about nonsense. But yeah, it's just hard for me to believe a professional athlete decided to share that horrible take, that they should just be allowing her to go get buckets night in and night out because that's what's good for the league. No, listen, are we moving at the speed that the world or basketball fans will want it to be? No, right? But there's a lot of momentum, and that momentum is not solely based in that Caitlin Clark was a phenom this past year. And it's certainly not going to help her or the league. I think a more compelling story is, oh, she comes into the league, she's not the best right away. Oh, let's watch her journey to fight to become one of the best of these women. That's compelling to me. How is she going to switch her game up? Is she adjusting? Show me the behind the scenes of the things that she's going to do to get better. She hit in the weight room. Is she working on her agility? Is she watching film? Like, those are the stories that sports media needs to tell, right? They had a camera crew following them for full court press. Like, get more behind the scene footage of how she's adjusting. That is compelling. And I don't care if that's not compelling to a 17-year-old boy or a 24-year-old man or a 37-year-old man. I don't care about that. I care about people who love the game of basketball, who like women's sports, and are not undervaluing them by wanting to make them less competitive. I just find it ludicrous. I find it absurd, and frankly, just disrespectful all around. Also, just want to shout out Dawn Staley for showing up for her players. She's like sitting courtside whenever she can. She was at the Indiana Fever game, and there's like this picture of her with Aaliyah Boston, and oh my gosh, why can't I think of her name? Oh my God, her teammate who was drafted, I believe, last year. I cannot think of her name, and why am I thinking her name is Victoria? That could be very wrong, and I'm really sorry if it is. But seeing both of her players and her being so supportive, even in their loss, you know, she's there. She's trying to coach them up. And, you know, Dawn's been there. She's been in the WNBA. So, I don't know. I just think there are so many instances where I see Dawn Staley, and I think, like, this is somebody who gets it. This is someone who does it the right way. And one of those moments is in full court press, actually, when she's talking about her relationship with Camila Cardoso. And she's like, well, do I want a better relationship with her? Yes, of course. But I also will be the bad guy if it's going to make her the number one pick. Now, of course, we know she wasn't the number one pick, but Dawn Staley molded her this past year, and she got drafted higher than she would have had Dawn not been on top of her, right? I think there's also these like beautiful parts, and I'm only halfway through. So I'm moving to episode 3 and 4. I watched the first 2 earlier today, and there are a lot of beautiful sentiments about Camila Cardoso changing the trajectory of her family, and I just think it's so poetic and beautiful that she went to Dawn and she went to South Carolina to make those dreams a reality. And I think only Dawn is poised to lead some of these Black women. I mean, I think about Asia Wilson, right? Like, I think about her coming from South Carolina, staying at home, of course. But do I think that happens in the absence of a Dawn Staley? No, they don't build a powerhouse in the absence of Dawn Staley. It doesn't happen, right? Aaliyah Boston doesn't come to South Carolina, all right, away from her family and make the dreams of her family come true if Dawn Staley's not there. This Black woman, this powerful figure, God-fearing woman that Aaliyah Boston's family felt comfortable enough to send their daughter to, right? And even before that, you think of the Tiffany Mitchells, Kayla Davis, Alicia Gray, right? Like, there's a comfortability that Dawn provides that I think cannot be understated. And I know we say, like, she's for the culture, South Carolina's for the culture. Like, I get that. But there is value in a Black woman leading other Black women on these teams. And there's value and importance in the way that Dawn coaches them in this, like, motherly way. Dawn doesn't have kids of her own, but there's this maternal tough love that you can just feel, right? Like, they're so comfortable. They always come back. They only say good things about her. She clearly still seems to be relatable to them in a lot of ways. So I don't know. I just think she's the GOAT when it comes to coaching Black women, which is the majority of college basketball. Dawn is the GOAT of that. Like, she is the GOAT because of that. I'll say that. Right? Like, there are people with more championships, of course. Pat Summitt built, in another episode, I called her the GOAT. But there are things that Dawn Staley has been able to accomplish that Pat just simply wouldn't have been able to. And again, not wins and losses, but I just mean the relatability, the example, right, in front of your eyes, a comfortability that is provided by just seeing a woman that looks like you. So anyway, that was not on the docket to talk about today, except for just to say, I love Dawn. And that turned into like 4 minutes of me talking about her. So anyway, moving on to Congress. And listen, I know the world is on fire right now, and we could be criticizing them for many, 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 many other things. But I just want to talk about the chaos that erupted between Representative Crockett and Representative Green. Okay. You don't need to know much. Just know that they were talking back and forth. And at some point, Green says, I think your fake eyelashes are messing up what you're reading. Okay. Which, like, that's a shot at a Black woman. Don't ever do that. But we also knew Green was raggedy trash bag juice already. So there's that. And so at that point, it's getting loud. People are going back and forth. AOC pipes up and is like, this is inappropriate. Like, this shouldn't be happening. Strike those words from the record, or that there was a violation of some sort. And at some point, her and Green are going back and forth. And AOC says, like, baby girl, like, you don't want to go there. They find out that there's no violation. Okay. They deem that there's no violation in what Green was saying. Well, then Crockett decides she's going to have her own clapback. And she says, I'm just curious, just to better understand your ruling, if someone on the committee then starts talking about somebody's bleach blonde, bad built, butch body, that would not be engaging in personalities, correct? Y'all. First of all, Black women forever and ever. I say it all the time. Okay. I love us from infinity to infinity. Always. She is wild. That's hilarious. Somebody's made this into like remixes. All right. So this woman is never going to get away from this phrase. Bleach blonde, bad built, butch body. The alliteration is masterful, honestly. And I don't know if she wrote it down. I don't know if she just came up with it on the spot. But it needs to be applauded. And my other favorite part is that Representative Crockett went on Abby Phillips' show on CNN, and Abby Phillips asked her, like, do you have any regrets? And she was like, oh, no regrets. And so she stood on that. And then the other thing was she asked her, that Michelle Obama famous quote where it's like, when they go low, we go high, which I feel like a lot of people have just thrown out of the way. Sorry, Miss Obama. But she says no, because Green always takes it to hell. And like, Okay, well, if that's what we're doing, that's what we're doing. She didn't say that last part. I said that part. All right. But she did say the take it to hell part. And so I don't know. I just thought that was hilarious. And of course, we need them to be doing a lot more important things. So many more important things, right? The world is on fire. But I just thought that was funny. Like, if they're not going to do any work, like, at least be entertaining. Because this was giving a reality TV show, honestly. And now we can go back to fighting the good fight. Okay, bye. Moving on to me being excited about the Olympics. The Olympics are this summer, 2024 Olympics in Paris. And I love the Olympics. I get geeked out over the Olympics, like my favorite thing. Just little note, my guest for next week, my first interview for the podcast, is an Olympian, okay? And a gold medalist. All right, that's all I'll say, okay? But Simone was in action for the core classic. She added some sort of triple something to her floor routine. Anyway, she's phenomenal still. So if she's not hurt, there's just no one there that is going to compete with this woman. And she is the GOAT for a reason. Gabby Douglas was also there. She struggled a little bit, looked nervous. But it was her first year back. I mean, I think she fell off the bars multiple times, and that's one of her better events. So kind of shocked by that. But, I mean, it's her first competition back. Sydney McLaughlin, the 400-meter hurdles beast, she was back in action this week at L.A. At a Grand Prix, which I didn't even know you'd call it that, a Grand Prix. And not Grand Prix. You following? And she ran the 200, just a sprint, which she's been training for a 400-meter race, right, to break that world record. At least that's what's been said. And so it was interesting to watch her run the 200 and sprint. But she won the race. I think it was like 22.08, and she was apparently trying to go under that. But crazy. It's going to be exciting. If she goes double gold in 400 and 400 meters, that's going to be crazy. But she runs, I think, like just over 50 in 400-meter hurdles. So they certainly think it's possible. And to wrap up, let's talk about reviews that no one asked for. Like I said, I watched Bridgerton this week. Bridgerton, phenomenal. I thought it moved very slow. Now, for a 4-episode, competing against the first 4 episodes of the other seasons, it's not good. I'll be honest. They wrapped up in the end of episode 4, and if you know, you know. They saved it with that, okay? But before that, it just felt very boring. And all the things that apparently are in the book, all these feelings that Colin has, they don't translate to the screen. So all these things that people are saying, like he was already thinking before the end of episode 4, I'm like, how would you have known that? It doesn't say that in the show. And so I just feel like there was a lot of heavy lifting that the book did. And people who who read the book, which I am not, in that group, I just felt like they didn't show it. All right. If he was yearning for her, like before episode 4, they didn't show that. Okay. It just even episode 2, after the scene outside her house, like, in the book, apparently it says, he had realized all these things, and I'm trying not to spoil it for people. But in short, there's a lot of heavy lifting, apparently, that the book readers, in their minds, that was happening. And I just didn't see it as just a strictly show viewer. I've also been watching, like I said, Full Court Press. We talked about that. And then Upshaw's on Netflix, which I have really enjoyed the last part. It's hilarious. It's funny. I basically binged 2 through 4 in the last 3 weeks. I think it's worth the watch. And I give that maybe like a 8.5 out of 10. I give Full Court Press right now, because there's a lot of Caitlin Clark, I'll give it a 9 out of 10, but it's very well done. Bridgerton, I'll give it a 8 out of 10 because it just doesn't touch the other 3. Or the other 2. And then certainly doesn't touch Queen Charlotte, which I believe to be my favorite one, which I did find out that Shonda Rhimes is the one who wrote it. And let's see. What have I been genuinely curious about this week? I did have a good one. I don't remember what it was. And so my question will be, how many podcasts do you think exist in the world? Like active podcasts that are still being made, not the ones that have gone to die, of course. How many active podcasts are there out in the world? And yes, I do strongly believe that not everybody needs one. But here we are. Okay, no, I remember what the question was. Can you imagine what disposable camera photos at concerts used to look like? There's just no way there are really good photos that people took on those disposable cameras at concerts in the 90s. There's no way. There's got to be like a blob of someone on stage with terrible lighting. Okay. That's all for this week, y'all. Again, give me guesses on who you think the guest is. The first guest on Genuinely Curious podcast is, because I'm excited for y'all to see. They, like I said, are an Olympian. They're looking to compete this year. 2-time world champion and Olympic gold medalist. So give me your guesses. Put them in the comments. Put it in my DMs, I guess. And let's see if you're right. All right. Thanks for listening. Bye.